Next up is Oral 7. This is New York City group, NEST+M, New York. This is a Mission 5 flight experiment.
Hello. Our proposal title is, our question for our experiment is, what is the effect of microgravity on mold growth on white bread? And our school is NEST+M. Next slide. Student team members. My name is Nora Jam, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Foyaz Loudon, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Alexander Harris, and I am also in 5th grade.
Next
Our
slide.
collaborators, listed in alphabetical order, are also our classmates. They are all in 5th grade.
Proposal summary. Our question is, what is the effect of microgravity on mold growth on white bread? We want to do this experiment because before this experiment, we did not know very much about mold growth. It would also be really interesting to learn about a new topic in microgravity.
We are using an FME type 2 tube. We have 2 substances in the FME. One of them is white bread, and the other one is formalin. Formalin is a fixative, so when the FME is coming back down to Earth, mold will stop growing on the bread.
The insight we hope to gain from this experiment involves mold starting out as dust. If there's a lot of mold dust in the air, then it will crowd each other out and naturally land on the bread. However, if there's little, then because of the microgravity, it will float and not land on the bread. We plan to measure the results of our ground element and our microgravity element by measuring the area of the mold on the white bread in square inches. We also plan to observe the color of the mold and the color of the white bread. We plan to chart the data on a bar graph. Next slide.
Experiment materials and handling requirements. We used an FME type 2. We put 0.3 grams of white bread and 5 milliliters of formalin. There are no sample humans in origin in this experiment. The clamp will be released and the tube will be shaken D2 days, which is the latest time possible. Once the formalin interacts with the white bread, all mold growth will stop. Next slide.
The question to be addressed by the experiment. Our question for this experiment is, what is the effect of microgravity on mold growth on white bread? We plan to see if mold grows more or less in microgravity compared to Earth. We also plan to compare the color of the breads from the 2 different environments. We want to do this experiment because we don't know that much about mold growth, and it seems very interesting. Whenever we think about bread, we also think about mold. Also, it would be really interesting to learn about a new topic in microgravity.
We know that bread mold can be 3 colors: black, green, or blue. We also know that bread mold is formed by spores reproducing. Mold spores can be 3 to 40 microns in size. Mold starts as dust and floats in the air until it finds food to land on. Mold is actually fungi. In order for mold to grow, you need mold spores, food that mold can land on, such as bread, and a warm and moist environment.
The insight that will be gained from this experiment involves mold starting out as dust. If there's a lot of mold dust in the air, it will naturally crowd each other out and land on the bread. However, if there's very little mold dust in the air, it will probably float and never land on the bread. This will show us how much mold dust is in the air. And that's a picture of blue mold, and on the right, it's a picture of black mold.
Experiment design. The proposed experiment addresses our question by seeing if mold grows on the untouched bread in the FME tube in microgravity. Since our question is, what is the effect of microgravity on mold growth on white bread, the question and the experiment are closely related. We chose bread for our experiment because mold grows well on it. Also, when we think of mold, the first thing that comes to our mind is bread.
Our experiment has one initiation process. The formalin will be released on the bread to stop mold growth so that we are only comparing a microgravitational and gravitational environment. We plan to conduct the same experiment on Earth as on the ISS. The purpose of this ground element is to compare mold growth on Earth and in microgravity.
When the FME returns to Earth, we plan to analyze the area of the mold, the color of the mold, and the color of the white bread. We plan to use a ruler and we can easily get access to one. Over time, we have become very excited about this experiment, and it was a great honor to be chosen. Next slide. And we also like to acknowledge some people. The student team would like to thank our teacher, Ms. Stevenson, NEST+M's SSEP program administrator, and NEST+M assistant principal, Mr. Brendan Alfieri, and NEST+M science teacher, Mr. Marvin Cardon-Gara. We would also like to thank the SSEP people, the Center for the Advancement of Science and Space, the New York State Space Grant Consortium at Cornell University, the NYC Department of Education, and the NEST+M PTA. Lastly, we'd like to thank the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. And we have our letter of certification by the teacher facilitator there.
Does anybody have any questions for the New York City team, Team 1? Before I go to the questions, though, gentlemen, are you ready for your experimental launch on Orb 2 on July 11th?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We are too.
Raquel from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. You mentioned you were going to look at the difference in colors. What's the significance of the blue, the black, and the green mold?
Well, the significance between the blue, the black, and the green mold is that when it's up in space, there are different temperatures. So it would show us like how, like what temperature there it is up in there. That's it.
Hi, Suzanne, also from New York. When you say you're testing on white bread, did you consider other breads, and why did you choose white bread?
We did consider other breads, but we chose white bread because it's used very often and mold grows well on it.
I'm Mihao from Denver, Colorado, or Highlands Ranch, more accurately. How will formalin affect the bread? Like, do you think it might destroy some mold that could possibly affect your experiment results?
Well, we don't think it will destroy the mold. No, we don't.
I could add on to that. Well, the formalin would stop the mold growth when it comes down to Earth, so there's not gonna be any effect done to the bread or the mold.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there, I'm Kelly from North Charleston, South Carolina, and I was wondering, did you take into account preservatives that are sometimes added into bread, and what kind of white bread did you choose?
Well, we chose Wonder Bread, and we don't know why we chose it. Our teacher chose it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody's on the hook. Okay, let us thank New York City Team 1.